Well, hi. Um, welcome to Brain Club. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. I'll share screen and get us oriented to our program. All right, so, um, Sarah, are you on let everyone in duty so I can move the window out of my visual
Yep.
field? Sweet.
Mhm.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Our conversation today will be around understanding your access needs with a focus on access needs in employment. Brain Club, of course, is our weekly educational program that to educate the broader ABB community about neurodiversity and related topics of inclusion. Just gonna name that this is an education space. This is not for medical or mental health advice. This is not a support group. ABB does offer those things, but that's not Brain Club. All forms of participation are okay here. As many of you have figured out, you can have your video on or off, and even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. We certainly do not need you to sit still or look at the camera or any of these other neuronormative conventions, so feel free to walk, move, fidget, stim, eat, take breaks, whatever works for you. Including observation is a completely valid form of participation. We want people to be able to participate however you are most comfortable. And that includes all formats of communication, unmuting and using mouth words. We do have a portion of today's Brain Club that's a pre-recorded video panel. So during that time, we'll have the chat box running. And the thing about the chat box, I'll also say, is that please don't feel like you have to get your thoughts out quickly. Please feel free to, if you see something in the chat or even you see something in the video and you have a thought about it 10 minutes later, completely fine to talk about it whenever your idea comes to you. You know, that is totally normal Brain Club culture. The chat kind of runs in parallel. It does not usually exactly coincide with what's going on the video panel. So just it's kind of like parallel conversations. So just feel free to engage on your own terms in your own way. Here at Brain Club, it's really important to us that our view of the world, that we all have different brains and bodies, and there's no one correct type of brain or body that's really infused in everything we talk about here at Brain Club. And it's really important to us to cue safety to all of you, to all participants. And so in addition to affirming all aspects of identity, we really value the collective access needs, what the group needs to engage in this educational program. And so we try to really very intentionally facilitate this in order to cue safety to all of you. Speaking of which, we do have private messaging enabled. So if you have a question or a comment and you'd rather it not be public, feel free to send it as a direct message to me and I'll read it out without your name. And certainly if there's like anything you need about your access needs or if you feel excluded or anything, you can, that's also, please reach out to us. Our goal here is to create a space where people can collectively learn and unlearn together, where everyone can feel safe, and for many, really experience something different from the quote outside world. I love this quote from one of our community advisory board members. To have a place where I'm not masking, I'm not acting, and I'm not spending over half my mental energy asking what they expect of me. I don't have that anywhere else. That's what we're going for here at Brain Club. And we aim for that in all our programs, really. And so, to that end, we have a spread the word team that helps spread the word about our programs on social media, etc. Lizzie, if you can post the spread the word sign up in the chat, that would be awesome. And we'd love if you wanted to join our spread the word team. Last bit of access, closed captioning is enabled. You just have to toggle it on if you'd like to use it. So depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon, but if not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. So you can do the same, hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. And that's my visual support to actually open the chat box so I see it. Okay, we are continuing our month of December theme of our 2023 Brain Club Greatest Hits, revisiting some of the themes that we have discussed throughout the year that our staff team thought were really important to revisit as like our most salient themes. And sometimes when you revisit a theme after months and months, you have a different perspective because of all the experiences and conversations and the reflections that you've had since the last time you thought about it. We journey on. Also named that actually, besides our regular 4 weeks of Brain Club, we have a bonus Brain Club as part of our virtual New Year's Eve celebration. So on New Year's Eve from 5 to 7:30 Eastern, we've got activities for all ages with Zoom breakout rooms, including a New Year's Brain Club and live performances. From Rajni Edens, Poppy's Planet, Barry and me, and Todd Gevery. I think it's going to be awesome, and we'd love if you can join us. All right, so why we're talking about access needs, and access needs I would define as anything that anyone needs for full and meaningful participation in your life. A lot of times that doesn't happen. What happens is, whether it be at work, at school, in healthcare, in relationships, it's trying to fit people into containers that don't work for them. And that's why we think it's really important to have conversations around access needs, and that framework of access needs. What do I need to fully and meaningfully participate? Can make all the difference, because when they're not met and you can name that's what's happening, it's a very different narrative for many people. So, as I said, anything required to meaningfully and fully participate. Everyone with all types of brains has access needs. It's just that neurodivergent folks, our access needs are less likely to be met by the defaults of society. There's all different types of access needs, whether that be physical, emotional, communication related, social or interpersonal, technology. There's all kinds of access needs. And so we talk a lot about access needs here because that framework, figuring out what your access needs even are, and then strategies for bridging those gaps when your situation or your environment does not meet your access needs. There's this concept of the social model of disability that as opposed to the medical model that talks about the deficits of the person, the social model of disability talks about lack of access, barriers in the environment to access. If I had a visible disability, like if I were a wheelchair user and I approach a building that does not have a ramp, I'm going to have more disability than if I approach a building that does have a ramp. And so it is with invisible disability as well. So I'm going to read some quotes from our community members about what it's like to come to understand their access needs. And then we're going to play a short video clip with a collection of interviews from our staff here at All Brains Belong about what it's been like to learn about our access needs. And then we'll have plenty of time for conversation. Like a lot of people throughout my life, I knew that many things weren't working for me. I never thought of this as relating to, quote, access needs, though. I just thought I had character flaws. I now see a lot of this as simply reflecting the ways a brain like mine would raggedly interact with a neurotypical world. Yup. And another quote, I learned about access needs at Brain Club. Before this, I just thought my needs were too much. Now I know that actually these are access needs and that everyone has them and that I don't need to shame myself for them. And I would add to that, when someone tells you explicitly or implicitly that one is too much and are shaming a person for having needs, that is a reflection on the person doing the shaming. End of quote. I see others around me with similar access needs, and I feel less alone. Yeah. All right, well, let's go to the video. David, take it away. So you just added people to the back end of Acuity, and what are your reflections?
My brain is a fried egg, and I know why it feels like this, because it was so much of a new motor plan with my dyspraxia, and I used to feel like this all the time, and I just didn't know why, and I would just think, oh, there goes my brain again. It's just fried. So it's so nice to know now, um, like what's happening, and also for me to build my schedule appropriately so I can not continually be in this fried mode.
Thank you for sharing that. And I wonder, now that you have this lens of like, so like event, my brain is fried. Interpretation, the thing was not set up to work for my brain. And it's a new motor plan, and it's going to be that much more demanding, and it didn't work for me. Does that also then shift your narrative about yourself at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like so I took some notes on the new motor plan, and um I'm gonna type them up and then like paste it where I can see it on my wall, and then I'm gonna use that support so my brain doesn't have to think as much, and also like offloading it onto a visual support, like it just helps me be kinder to myself, and now I don't think, oh, my brain stinks, it can't keep all these pieces together. It's like, oh, I'll just use my support, and there it is, and now I don't have to be so fried and tired.
That's
Yeah, so big
amazing.
difference. Yeah.
Did you know any of this about yourself like a year ago?
No.
So this is
No.
like a new phenomenon, right? So like the struggle
Yeah.
has always been there. And the
Yep.
like patterns of the struggle have always been there. But now you have this lens of like, the thing is hard because it was a mismatch for my needs. It doesn't mean that I am broken or that my brain is broken or any of it. It's just like, yep, that's a mismatch. And now I have these tools about how I get my needs met.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. I feel like I don't have to beat myself up anymore having this new lens, thinking everyone is doing it better than me and my brain just can't keep it together.
So we are having a conversation today about access needs, and how does coming to learn about access needs in general and rewriting your story, how has that been life transforming? I see it at Brain Club, um, every Tuesday. I see people sharing their stories and having language to explain their experience in a way that helps remove the shame and the ableism that so many of us grew up with. And so I feel like having language is the first step to being able to, kind of rewrite your story and reframe it, so that you can even know what your access needs might be. Because I think sometimes, people don't know what their access needs are. They just know that what is happening in their life is not working.
Right. And then not feeling alone in that. And when you hear somebody else talking about their access needs and you can relate to it, it builds connection and it builds safety and a sense of being seen and heard.
Yeah,
It's
and
huge.
seeing that someone else has an access need just like you, and that access need isn't getting shut down like maybe it had been previously in your childhood. Like seeing that, oh, it's okay to have this access need and someone's just like me.
Mhm.
And then the process of letting go all that shame and judgment that that is my access need and it's okay. Others have that access need just like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes I think you need it modeled in order to even see what it might be. I think, again, I think sometimes it's like, things aren't working, but you're not sure why. And when you hear other people talk about their own access needs, it helps you, identify your own. And I feel like that's what I notice at Brain Club every Tuesday is that, and being a part of this, interdependent team that we have at All Brains Belong, like we're constantly having this conversation about what our access needs are. And yeah, I think it's just it's really unique and really helpful.
I think in my 47 years of being on this planet, I'm still not even sure what my access needs are, and just being open to not knowing what they are. And because you've been doing things a certain way, probably your whole life, and made adjustments to it, it doesn't mean that it works. It just means that you do it a certain way. So it's a lot of unlearning, but in a very safe way. It's because without safety, it's hard to learn or unlearn, right? And that's what's nice about Brain Club is it's a safe place, or any groups, any of our groups, really. It's a safe place to kind of explore that and let your guard down and be vulnerable in a place where everybody is doing the same thing or, trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the setup too, like I've never seen anything like Brain Club, the setup where you can come and just come with your video off, type in the chat, use mouth words. Like I think that really, for me, that creates a lot of safety. And like I never knew that I actually liked typing in the chat more than using mouth words. Like that's something new that I learned about my brain. And that's been really eye-opening because I always thought, oh, I like more one-to-one things and less bigger group things. But I think a barrier for me to groups is using mouth words, like knowing when to like come into the conversation and share or like not wanting to step on other people's voices or when they're sharing and stuff and just being really confused about all that. But the chat like opens up that door for me to share and feel like I can be a part of the group and feel like I can belong in a safe way for me.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think when you offer everything with a menu of choices, then suddenly it helps you get in touch with maybe what your needs are. Because I think, something that I've learned through All Brains Belong is, with 1 in 5 people being neurodivergent, there's a lot of people that don't realize that they could function better with certain adjustments. And when you offer, things as a menu for everybody, suddenly, people are able to say, I don't know, maybe I'll try that thing. And then it works really well for them and their brain isn't as exhausted at the end of the day. And it's like, so I think really like that kind of universal design principle idea of having lots of different choices for everything that you offer sort of allows people to tap into what their needs are.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm even blanking on what examples of what access needs might be right now.
Right?
I don't know.
I know
I
it's
don't know.
hard on the spot.
Yeah. But I'm also
What are
thinking about
examples of access needs? Yeah, I'm trying to think of examples. Sorry, go
I'm
ahead,
thinking
Olivia.
about how even like through our scheduling system where, you can text us, you can email us, um, having those types of options, you don't have to, you can use, the chat, or you can call us and leave a voicemail, or, I mean, that's pretty universal. That's a nice way, and that's not, you don't get that access anywhere else, really. And then, having virtual or in person or outdoor appointments. Those are good examples. I'm sure there's lots more, but
Yeah, we're really talking about any way that, would be beneficial for someone to meaningfully participate in anything in their life, right? So that
Mhm.
there's a lot of possibilities for examples.
And I think what we were talking about yesterday, Sarah, about just sitting with others as stories are being shared, that there's so much power in that. And just, coming each week, listening in, and like hearing someone share, and then you think, wow, like that's how I relate to the world too, where, oh, I didn't know like that was someone else's experience, I thought it was just me. But like sitting and hearing the stories, it just makes you realize that you're not alone. You're not the only one.
Definitely.
And I feel like that is one of the first steps to realizing, oh, like someone else has a story like me. I feel like that's been the first steps for me to be like starting to rewrite my story when I hear other people's stories and they're similar to mine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think when we're working in systems that we know aren't necessarily built for us, or aren't built for anybody necessarily, there is such that temptation to be like, oh well, the system's just broken and it doesn't matter what I do and everything's just going to be broken. And that overwhelm of feeling like you're like just hitting your head against the wall over and over again, the like nothing's ever going to change, that feels like for me, that feels like the most dangerous part of overwhelm, because that's the burnout of this is never going to change. And having that framework of my access needs aren't being met, and I'm learning what my access needs are and I can advocate for them better. I think that does make a difference.
Totally makes a difference. Because it's almost like the alternative, and the shame spiral of like, here I go again, nothing's ever going to be different, like there's this other layer that's further draining my battery of like, there's something wrong with me that I got myself in this situation, and like, how did I get in the hole again?
Yeah, I think that's true, because I think it really is tempting to just have that like, well, I don't even want to like have that framework or think about that, because if it's my fault, then I can change it and there's something I can do and there's more actionable steps, versus if this is my access needs aren't being met and it's this whole system thing, that seems scary because it seems harder to change. But it still is an important framework to have of its access needs. It's the system, not it's whatever, just not meeting my access needs. Yeah.
Like, I think for me, when I'm overwhelmed, there's this sense of like, that there's nothing I can do about it because the world is overwhelming and everything sucks and everything's hard. But what's new is now that I recognize that overwhelm usually means my access needs are not being met, that provides me a framework for understanding why everything's so overwhelming. And even if I mean, there are some things I have agency and privilege to address in that regard, but even if I don't, just knowing that that's why I feel so terrible, as opposed to this like nondescript weight of overwhelm. I don't know, it feels different. Do you ever feel that?
I feel like it feels like the difference between like, oh, I can't. I feel like I've been talking to so many people about housing this week, and like, oh, I can't find any housing options because there's none out there and none of them are affordable, versus I can't find any housing options because I'm not trying hard enough, I'm not making enough money, whatever that looks like. It really is that like social model, that social model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even like when my brain does not perform in the way in which I am expecting it to perform, it's like the initial like right now, even like I'm having like a hard time like sequencing my thoughts and connecting them in order. But like there's nothing wrong with my brain. My brain's just really overwhelmed. It's got too much, it's doing too much stuff, and like something's not working for it. Like that's new. That's like a new narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was seeing that when I was thinking about like how I write notes, and when I write notes, and how if I'm writing notes at 8 or 9 p.m., it takes me a lot longer to write each note. And that is that makes sense, and that's understandable, and that's okay, and that's not that my brain's broken. It's 8 or 9 p.m. My brain's tired, and it's understandable that it's going to take longer to do things than at whatever time of day my brain's feeling the best, I guess.
Right. And knowing that when you have access to your cortex to be able to even like think about, oh, I could actually make a plan. Like making plan is like this higher order brain skill. So like planning what tasks I do at what time of day, like it actually takes access to your cortex to even be able to have that thought. But if you don't even have language to even know that you might want to even think about making a plan like that you actually could feel a little better if you knew what exactly was thwarting you.
Even like, I think as for us as providers, we're talking about burnout every single day with people, and we're talking about how to prevent burnout and how to work on it. And that doesn't mean that we're not separate from. I've been reading or listening on book Trauma Stewardship. And I think the part where they're talking about like feeling like you have to keep going because this is such important work and there's nobody else who's going to do it, and like I guess I don't know where I was connecting that, but that like I think that part of burnout, of like I feel like I should know this, and I feel like I should be able to prevent this because I've been here before and I know how bad it is and I've gotten out of it before. Like I should know better. But you don't have to take on that guilt of it's because of me.
Yes. Every brain has a finite capacity, and every brain, when its capacity is exceeded by the demands of your life chronically, is going to start shutting down into burnout state. It's self-preservation. It's really about naming about having a framework for understanding that. And because like when you understand that, you have a framework for that, you know, the story you tell yourself about it changes. I want to share a couple of other slides that I forgot, brain. Because I think a really important theme to me from those interviews were about the importance of normalizing access need discussions. Just like making it an everyday, no big deal thing. Like, what would that look like? Um, so we for a while, we've been talking about access need discussions in the workplace. We've had a variety of Brain Club panels about that. And Lizzie, if you could throw in the chat the playlist to all the past neuro-inclusive employment themed Brain Clubs, that would be awesome. But the idea that you and these screenshots came from a LinkedIn post I made a couple weeks ago about neuro-inclusive onboarding, but it's not even limited to the workplace, right? It's just like everywhere you are. How do you prefer to receive information? What is your preferred way of communicating information to others? What can an organization or a group or anything you're part of, a school, anything, your family, what can a group do to make you feel safe, comfortable, and fulfilled? What comes easily to you? What's hard? What drains your battery? What charges your battery? How do you need to get feedback? I think we at Brain Club, we often talk about the concept of rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD, and whether that is in a workplace context or a relationship context, relationships of any kind, like just the idea of there are nervous systems that experience negative or even neutral feedback as painful. And because as so many people today have already said, and so many people, most of the people I interact with in a given day would say that I don't know what to ask for. I don't know what my access needs are. My favorite quotes of all time, one of our community members who said, I don't know what my access needs are. I just know they're not being met. Yep. Which is why, in an employment space, what we do here, and Lizzie, if you can throw that link to because this is kind of hard to read, I realize, and when it was small, it was okay, but when it's stretched out, it's kind of hard to read. So we'll just link to the original post if you want to read what it actually says. But the idea of like actually having a menu to pick from, and how do you like to receive information, having like some choices, plus open-endedly if people have other ideas. What's your preferred mode of communicating information to others? Have some choices. And if you can combine a menu with open-ended ways of giving input, then that can support that coming up with the idea part. So that. Anyway, I would love to hear from anyone about whatever's coming up for you. And start reading backwards from the chat. Caitlin says, I perceive that people are impatient and feel annoyed about changing the way something is offered or changing the way communication is offered. And this negative feedback deters me from speaking up about advocacy. Yeah. Anyone else ever experienced that? I have. It also, to even like build a structure to bring about change actually requires that enough people in a group have access to their cortex, to the thinking part of their brain at the same time. I see there's lots of people in the chat agreeing with you, Caitlin. to hear from anyone, either out loud or in the chat, about what it's been like for you to reflect upon your access needs and whether that framework of access needs has impacted you in some way. Ocean says, I've recently asked for access needs in the medical setting and had them refused. I can't even call the doctor at this point because this type of thing is so common. Yeah, so I mean, I think that might be an example maybe of conflicting access needs. I think when someone needs a particular thing that someone else is not able to give because of their own access needs, what a world it would be if we had that framework to actually articulate that. I think that might have a huge impact. Oh, interesting. So Jenny, you're talking about like that you'd worry that like access needs would get like overused and would lose potentially some meaning.
Or just kind of lose credibility, like, oh boy, here we go. Like first they want a trigger warning. Now they're talking about their access needs. Like what's the world coming to? And I'm always worried about invoking that reaction.
Yeah. And depending on who you're interacting with and what the culture's like, I mean, if I enter an unsafe environment, I'm not probably going to label what I'm talking about as access needs. I might, it may take a different format, I work best when I have the kind of brain that does X. Yeah, I'm better able to concentrate when, yeah, I can get a lot more done when, like you evoke these like all of the, the oppressive systems and capitalism. Like if you're in a setting where you can kind of like use that you play to that to get your need met, like I think that sometimes that really works. So Sierra says, I think the fear of burning bridges makes it difficult to speak up about access needs and advocacy. Being blamed for burning bridges and losing relationships is such a common experience for neurodivergent people. Yeah. Jenny's talking about reactions from sharing a diagnosis. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother, that'd be like a really interesting brain club, right? Like just all of the really, anything ranging from ridiculous to like downright harmful reactions to people speaking their truth and sharing things about their experience. Just the lack of awareness. Sarah says, I heard Dr. Gabor Mate speaking recently about how children are born with two basic needs, one for attachment, another for authenticity. Unfortunately, so many children are forced into foregoing authenticity in order to have their attachment needs met. Oh, I have chills. Then in adulthood, it becomes difficult to unpack that and recognize what our authentic access needs even are. Yeah. So, like we talk a lot about at Brain Club about just like surrounding yourself with people who get it, who you can have the experience of connection and authenticity at the same time. Like, whoa, can you imagine? All right, so the never experienced that. You don't even know what's possible. And so once you do experience that, then a couple people shared in the chat earlier about you go back into situations where it's not comfortable. And now you really notice that contrast. Steve says maybe a useful framework is less focused on the self and more, this person is struggling. I wonder what access needs are not being met. Yes, right. And it's that reminds me of the way I responded to Ocean's comment. You know, when this conflicting access need framework, you know, can explain so much conflict. But when you have multiple people who, you know, because we all have different brains, right? We all have different brains that all have different needs. And inevitably, we're going to have conflicting access needs. It's just that when two people both don't have awareness of their access needs, or even if not both people, like one person has an awareness of access needs and the other doesn't, it's very difficult to negotiate those conflicting access needs when you don't both have awareness. Paul says my company's 2 annual meetings are dreaded by me. There are meetings and events all day, capped off by a dinner. Ugh. I go back to my hotel room with a fried brain. They want us to socialize. I'm terrorized. I mean, that is just so common, right? That it's that the default is that everyone would thrive in those kinds of situations. Without and that in many cultures there's so much judgment. And you know, it's internal conflicting access needs sometimes too. You know, if there's part of me that like needs to opt out of that situation. And so, you know, what's my script? What's my way that I get out of that? And is this the kind of place that I can be, or some kind of culture where I can be authentic about opting out? Or do I have to opt out in an inauthentic way? Sorry, the chat's like bouncing. There we go. Matt says, I find it difficult to speak about access needs at work because of the preconceived neuronormative standards. So I find phrases that are more so, it's like you said what I just said. I should have just read what you said because you're doing it more articulately than I did. So to try to find phrases that are more socially accepted and a little easier for others to understand, that doesn't work for me. I'm not efficient at this task, so it's a waste of the company's time. My brain doesn't work like that, but this other option, I can get a lot done. Yeah. I love that. Congratulations, Paul. Paul opted out of the holiday meeting. I mean, the other thing is, you know, even, you know, neuronormative, social, and sensory, and like all of it, that these gatherings and all of it goes along with it are just not a match for many people's needs. There's also, you know, COVID considerations. You know, we know that neurodivergent people are at higher risk of complications from COVID, including long COVID. And, you know, large group gatherings may not be safe. Like, it may not be safe to breathe the air at such gatherings. So it's whatever it takes to stake out the boundaries that are safe to stake out. And unfortunately, it's often not safe to name what one needs. Steve's calling to mind previous brain clubs about how we don't need to be good at all the things. Yeah. Lizzie, if you could post the brain club, I think it was the November Neuro Inclusive Employment Brain Club. I think that's the one where that came up. These were a panel of employers who were recognized through our All Brains Belong has a a statewide in Vermont, neuro-inclusive employer bright spotting program where community members can nominate employers that are creating workplace environments where people with all types of brains can thrive. And we had a panel of employers being recognized through that program. And what Becky Walsh from Oak Maple said in talking about her neurodivergent employees, in that, you know, the neurodivergent people I work with are really, 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 really good at the things they're really, 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 really good at. And I would rather that than find people who are really good at everything, because it actually makes no sense that any brain would be good at everything. We all have strengths, things that are come easily to us, and we all have things that are really hard. Which is why, you know, like a neurodivergent job fair, what a cool idea. And you know, but also, you know, I think it's also, I think, like when I do trainings for employers, and you know, certainly there are, you know, nationally you can find people on social media who do trainings around, you know, these are the things you do to help autistic people, for example. Autistic people thrive at work. And you know, I think those conversations are really important. We have them a little bit differently. We talk about neuro-inclusion, the idea of, you know, you don't know when your employees are autistic or ADHD or any other flavor of neurodivergence. And often they don't know either. So it's the idea of creating environments where people with all types of brains can get their needs met and get their work done and feel like they belong and like have a good life. So that in what's involved there is just really understanding the access needs and the framework for access needs, and really understanding how brains work, you know, understanding sensory processing, understanding executive functioning, understanding motor planning and sequencing, putting the steps in the order, and like understanding where, when something goes wrong or something goes awry or something doesn't get done, like having that kind of framework to be like, I wonder, somebody in the chat said this earlier, you know, I wonder, I think it was Steve, I wonder what's an unmet access need. And, you know, can we normalize the conversation about what everyone needs to do their best work? And can we offer everything we do in multiple different ways? So using universal design principles, you know, flexible, multiple different ways of doing everything. Ooh, Sierra, did you just type that as I was saying that? Dopa Sync is awesome. Sierra says, universal design is really the only way to be fully inclusive in a world where so many people don't know their access needs or even know that they have access needs. Yes, absolutely. David, I love that you said that, because I was thinking about how to bring that up, and then I was like, oh, is that going to be like, is that going to open a thing? But anyway, you open the thing, so let's open the thing. You know, it's not just annual corporate meetings, it's the extended family for holiday gatherings. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I've had so many conversations with people in our community this week. The people are like so stressed out about the extended family gatherings. Like, yeah, so what would it look like? Wait, did we just Dopa Sync about Dopa Sync? We totally did, Sarah. That's amazing. So I don't know, what could it look like to name one's access needs heading into extended family gatherings? I can tell you what I did last year. It worked well for like 5 seconds, but it was a good 5 seconds. So turn taking, right? Normalizing turn taking, and maybe with a visual support or a tactile support, you know, or you mean like even turn taking in terms of, you know, Caitlin, can you say more about that? Turn taking, like normalizing that in a conversation so that everyone's not talking at once. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Looks like I'll go hide in my room until you go away. Right. And like, maybe that's okay, right? So just normalizing, like, yeah, I need a break. I need space. I have the kind of brain that I can do the interaction thing for like 5 seconds. And then Or what would it look like to plan something completely different? That it doesn't have to, just because it's always been the way that we've done it. Yeah, and as Sierra's saying, having like an activity running, like a puzzle, or something that is socially acceptable, that gives people an out. Last year, my 5-year-old and my then 5-year-old, they're 6 now. We came up with like our family access needs, and it was really only me and them participating. But we wrote out our ground rules, and we had them on a big whiteboard so that when visitors came, it was really clear what those access needs were. That lasted like the first day of the visit. That worked well, to have a visual support of like, autonomy is really important. We'll call everyone by their names and pronouns. Basic things. Because recognizing the access needs of the person for whom that change is new, maybe wouldn't have had awareness of a need for visual support, but very much needed the visual support to remind them about, this is how we're going to do this. Again, for 5 seconds. In the chat, David says, I'm passing on a huge complex brawl with my partner's very large extended family, far away with lots of driving between the various places. We'll just have Christmas brunch with a smaller subset of people. Yeah. Way to honor your access needs. That's awesome. Motion says, allow everyone the space to do what they need without judgment. Yeah, Caitlin, when I said tactile cues, I was thinking about the talking stick. I think it's amazing. I love that so much. We have a talking stick, or like a talking item in our medical office. Like it's on the menu. We have a universal design for healthcare menu, because that really is helpful for lots of brains. I often share that, like, my accommodation for my impulse control, especially when I get like really animated and heated about stuff, is like the mute button on Zoom. I need it. I need it to not be like constantly blurting and like talking over people and interrupting everybody and all of it. Because like, anyway, but I wish I could carry around a mute button in real life. Like, it's not my turn. Sarah says, through ABB, I've learned the phrase, I have the kind of brain that, yep. So it's interesting. I've been saying I have the kind of brain that before I actually knew what kind of brain I had. That's the phrase that I initially started teaching my child, like from really, really young. We're just talking about brains all the time. I have the kind of brain that, things are really loud and they really bother me. I have the kind of brain that I really want to know what to expect. I really want to know what's coming next. I have the kind of brain that, like, I need to move when I'm listening to you, or like I can't pay attention to you. And again, I didn't know anything about my brain when I started saying that, so that's greatly ironic. Love to hear from others. If others want to be heard or read.
Hi, this is Summer.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. So I've just been listening, and I find that I am definitely telling people maybe more of my access needs without really caring what they have to say. And so I feel that sometimes I intimidate people because I kind of know what I want, and I'm just like, oh, I have to put my headphones on. I can still hear you, but I can't stand the sound of your voice right now. So I'm either going to have to like leave this party, or this is what we're going to have to do. It is what it is. So sometimes for me, it's like, how do you kind of pull that back? And I think a lot of people, like, neurodivergent, neurotypical, we just have so many learned behaviors. Like one thing that came up recently was, sneezing and saying bless you. And I'm like, I just don't understand it. It drives me crazy. So I asked Siri, why do we do this? And in like 1648, Pope George something, there's a bubonic plague in Europe, and people were dying. And so the Pope started blessing all the sneezes. Well, we don't have the bubonic plague anymore. Why am I blessing somebody's sneeze? And it's just like, you start to sort of rehearse this, and maybe now I'm going to say, oh, that was a great sneeze, or maybe I won't say anything. But I used to be offended when people didn't bless my sneeze, and I didn't know why. So I think there's a lot of different pieces to the whole process of trying to tell people what your access needs are, but then, sometimes they're going to think that that's just an excuse, and they're just not going to get it no matter what you give them as far as information. And just trying to kind of navigate through all of that, I think getting the awareness out there to employers, to your family and friends, and kind of just being like, it is what it is, and us building courage within ourselves, so that we can be that voice that others can kind of take part in, and circle this around is really important.
Oh, I love everything you just said, and that I had no idea about the story of the bless you and the sneeze. So, yeah, I just love everything you just said. I think this is so important, and I think like I would layer on top of that, just thinking about we all have a finite capacity of time, of energy, of, if people are familiar with the concept of spoons, it's a term used in the chronic illness community, a finite amount of bandwidth. And if you're gonna spend it on people who don't get it, to provide them detailed explanations of like what they need to get, I don't know, you're gonna run out of bandwidth earlier. You're gonna drain your battery in ways that don't serve you. And so what's like the bare minimum amount of effort that can be expended to articulate your boundaries? It may be that you don't do much explaining at all. You just take the space you need. And I think another thing that happens as and I think this kind of comes in waves sometimes, like as a person develops an awareness of their access needs, as someone, and including like, you spend time with people who get it, you learn more about, at least I can speak for myself. I learn so much about my access needs when someone else describes theirs and I match it. I'm like, oh, that's words that apply to me. And those aren't necessarily the words that I would have used to describe my internal experience, but now I have language that you provided me. So I have my reflection reflected back to me through the stories of other people. And now I have language. Anyway, so you go through these experiences and you're shifting your own narrative of your own life. And you get sometimes really, oh, thanks, Lizzie, that's great. I can maybe make it clickable with that. Here we go. There we go. Here we go. Now it's clickable. So anyway, what I was saying is that, so you shift your own narrative and then like you go out there, right? And it's like tempting to, you go through these phases of like telling everyone about your access needs and telling, going here and staking your boundaries really passionately, enthusiastically. And then, that might also drain you too far in the other direction. And now you're exhausted. And so it's like this fine tuning of what would it look like to shift my own narrative and not exhaust myself by like, fine tuning the how I spend my own resources, my cognitive resources and my emotional resources and my energetic resources and all of it. And so, if what you have capacity for is to just walk out of a room without any explanation at all, do that. So with that, thank you all of you for being part of this conversation. And we look forward to to next week. On the 26th, next Tuesday, we'll be talking about shifting one's own narrative, really building on this conversation. So thank you all so much, and good luck this weekend.